Shout out to G-Man Boxing.
So we're a few days removed from the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder press conference. And since then, a few people have asked questions. Some people have said that Deontay Wilder, they think that mentally he's a bit all over the place. And I was kind of, when I looked at it, I was kind of like, meh, I was in the moment and I was kind of like, meh. Following on, I've seen some of the interviews Wilder's given, and I've definitely raised some eyebrows. I want to touch on what happened in the actual press conference when he had the headphones on. Now, when I seen that originally live, the first thing I thought of, actually, believe it or not, was Steve Collins when he was fighting Eubank. And I remember Hatman talked about it in the video. And I actually kind of thought that maybe that actually isn't a bad idea. Because I was just thinking about the way, just not even Steve Collins, Eubank, just in general. Like, put it like this, look at the website like Twitter. I have a Twitter. I don't use it for anything other than boxing. If boxing news wasn't on Twitter, I wouldn't use it. I don't really use any forms of social media other than YouTube. As I said, Twitter, you get boxing news, all the boxing forums, it's where I get the news. That's it. But you'll always go on Twitter and you'll always see little synchronicities with people on it, and it makes you kind of scratch your head. And you see people getting into, debates and then being like, oh, this guy, I'm going to have to block him. But it's like, hang on a sec. I'm talking more so about trolls. But thankfully, touch wood, I've never had to engage any of them on YouTube or on Twitter or anything like that. But when I look at them, I look at these people who are doing it, what are they craving? They're craving attention. They are, if you tweet something and they're the first one to comment, and they're just saying, oh, you're wrong about blah, 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 blah. You're essentially a fish in the ocean, and they're the fishermen. They're trying to bait you in to just respond, and you're getting the back and forth. And sometimes what people say is to these, they have to block them. And you see the people, they feel such a sense of pride, be like, he's blocked me, that person's blocked me. Yeah, it's like, do you know what you would have been better off doing? Just ignore them. They might be talking absolute, let them. Because at the end of the day, they want you to respond. It's like this in a lot of aspects. They are looking to get a reaction. The reason why they're doing that is they want to get a reaction out of you. They want to see how you react, and they are feeding off that. If you don't react, they're just like, oh, he's not reacting. It's hurting them. And at the end of the day, if you look at like big time boxers, you see guys like Dana White and all that block people. They're thinking, yeah, I've got Dana White blocking me. I've got this guy blocking me. You're actually feeding them. You're feeding the trolls. If you just ignore them, they'll go away. Because their whole game is based upon you, being a fish catching the bait. If no one's biting, well, they're eventually going to get sick and go. That's kind of what I thought about with Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. It's like, well, if Fury can't get to Wilder in terms of just little jokes and trolling him, that could, get to Tyson Fury. But then we see Deontay Wilder give interviews to, his normal press, I guess that's the kind of way I describe it. People who he trusts, people who are not going to ask any really difficult questions. And he started mentioning, and I saw Chris Andre, actually, it's funny enough that me and him, we were both thinking about the same thing, and he started mentioning about Paulie Malignaggi. Now, bear in mind, Paulie Malignaggi, Wilder has had a lot of disdain for since Malignaggi scored the first Fury Wilder fight to Tyson Fury. And obviously, Paulie Malignaggi was on Showtime at the time, and that was who Deontay Wilder was with for quite a few years at the time. So he was mentioning things like that, and that kind of, to me, made me realise that, hang on a sec, Deontay Wilder is maybe still a bit out there, maybe still just a bit, when you consider the fact that he has a go with these people for nothing more than they picked Tyson Fury to win. Really? And you're going and you're bringing up, saying things like, I'm not letting Fury beat me, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. It's just like, it's like, what the hell? And for me, like, when I look at Deontay Wilder, I see someone like Malik Scott. I've talked about this before, that I feel as though, although Malik Scott is saying Deontay Wilder is 10 times better than Ali and this, that, and the other, Does he actually believe that, or is he doing that because he knows this is how Deontay Wilder works? That you have to, as JD said, or well, that's not JD, as Mark Breland said, you don't tell Wilder this because he feels that he knows it all. Is Malik Scott going and just deciding, well, if I tell him X, Y, and Z, he's not going to do it, so I need to play to his ego, you know? And Deontay Wilder, he wants to surround himself with people who like that, play to his ego, you know? So he wouldn't go on, we'll say, like, you know, just, we'll say like a boxing show social, you know, video. If they're going to ask him difficult questions, he'd rather go on someone who's just going to be like, oh yeah, Fury clearly cheated in that rematch. You know, it was clear he loaded his gloves, and yeah, you were hard done by, you know, because it's stopping him from facing the reality of what happened. And I suspect that in this rematch, in this trilogy fight, at some stage, like early on, Fury might take a look at him, I don't know, but at some stage he's going to get hit with something hard. And the demons of that rematch are going to come back to Deontay Wilder, and that's going to be the interesting part, to see how he responds to that. Because Deontay Wilder has shown heart in the ring, and he has, but in terms of just the mental side of it, what happens now that I'm sure deep down subconsciously he knows what happened in that rematch, really, what really happened. And he's had the last year and a bit to have kind of, you know, his ego massaged, you know, this didn't happen, you know, this happened. We all know, like, the spike water, all that jazz, you know, all that stuff. Is it all going to come to reality when it gets in the ring and when he starts feeling some of the shots that Tyson Fury is hitting him with? And what will happen then? Will Deontay Wilder realise then that everything that's been said by, you know, his fanboys, it's not true? And I don't know what to do. I have no real plan B, because I was letting myself believe that I was the victim, that I was, you know, cheated out of the win. And now we're in this situation again. I've no way, I've no answers. Will that happen? When I think about Deontay Wilder, I think about the fans he aligns himself with. And I suppose you could say this about most fighters. But with Deontay Wilder, it's just, I've never seen anything like it with the fanboys. I really haven't. And I've used quotes on this channel before, but there's a Socrates quote, the Greek philosopher. And he says that a man's wealth can't be determined by his followers, but by the people who stand by him. Now, what does he mean by that, and how do I use this in boxing? Well, I interpret that to mean, what Socrates is getting at there, is that it's all well and good to follow. So, you're following that fighter, you're following Deontay Wilder, yeah, champ, you were hard done by, but what happens when Deontay Wilder is done with boxing? What happens when he decides to just walk away? He's not, will they follow, will they stand by him? Probably not. Now, you could say the same about most fighters, to be fair. How does this relate to boxing? Well, I only use this other analogy as well, and it's to do with, because people liken boxing to the art of war. And that quote I liken to this. Now, boxing has been closely resembled to the art of war. In 1480 or 480 BC, there was a battle of Thermopylae, I guess how you pronounce it, part of Greece. Now, it was fought by a king called Xerxes. He was Xerxes, king of Persia, which today is modern-day Iran. And on the Greek side, it was fought by King Leonidas of Sparta. And him and 300 Spartan soldiers, right, they stood by King Leonidas, knowing they were heavily outnumbered, knowing that there was no chance of victory. But they still stood by him nonetheless. They stood by him when they could have easily cut and run and left, but they didn't. Now, they didn't win that fight. They lost that battle. But their sacrifice that day helped keep the freedom for Greece, for Athens, for Sparta. And as I said, they stood by him. Now, if you were to take that and put it in boxing context, in the modern aspect, so if you were to take Deontay Wilder, the people who follow him, I say follow, I'm not going to say in a similar situation, but in a similar kind of situation in terms of a boxing kind of, you know, scenario, would they stand by him if they knew certain defeat was imminent? And I think we all know the answer, no, they wouldn't. They would be looking for the next person they can champion, essentially. Now, you could definitely say that about Tyson Fury as well, some of his fanboys. You can say about a lot of fanboys, but you will always find people who will stand by. But with Deontay Wilder, I think there's very few. Very few. I think that going into this trilogy fight, that Deontay Wilder may be putting all his eggs in his basket, that he can land on Fury late, that maybe Fury can get overconfident, lackadaisical, and that he can land, because he is very dangerous, Deontay Wilder. He will always be dangerous with that punching power, with that right hand. That is a given. But I really think that if Deontay Wilder doesn't find success early on, and Fury starts to get a foothold on this, then the writing is on the wall. I really do. I actually, to be honest with you, when this fight was announced originally, I actually did think this rematch would be a bit more competitive, and I still think it'd be more competitive than the original rematch. I should say trilogy, I should say. I think it'd be a bit more competitive. But the more I think about it, the more I see Tyson Fury winning this fight comfortably. Potentially, maybe even earlier than he did the rematch. Maybe even. Let me know your thoughts. I want to know what your guys' opinion is in the comment section. What are your thoughts on Deontay Wilder, his mental state? Do you think that, well, I think most people would. Do you think that the way his fans have massaged his ego and just kind of, oh yeah, no, you didn't do anything, you're this, you're that, you're still the... Do you think that is going to set him up for his downfall? I know Deontay Wilder as a person, he seems to someone who doesn't want to know... He doesn't want to know the truth. As Mark Breland said, you could try and teach him something, but he felt like he knew it all. And this is even before the loss. Someone like that, can you really teach them? It's what Malik Scott is doing, maybe playing to his ego in the hopes that it will teach him a few new techniques, that, he can use, some of the you can look at the other world and say, well, he's not doing this right, but how do I get him to do it right without telling him you're doing it wrong and then starting a row? Do you think that will help, or do you think that Deontay Wilder is at this stage a lost cause? Let me know in the comment section. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, lads, if you could, smash the like button, subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. #GMansRocks, all that good stuff. For now, lads and lassies, I will talk to you. Happy Friday. Peace.